Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the background, details, and outcome of the conflict that took place in the last week between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. An understanding of the events of the conflict consists of the following. Israel just concluded Operation Pillar Defense against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The operation lasted from November the 14th through the 21st. It concluded with a truce agreement between Israel and Hamas, brokered by Egypt with the influence of the United States. The background leading up to the conflict between Israel and Hamas was as follows. According to a summary by the Israeli Security Agency, 92 separate attacks against Israel by Hamas occurred in the month of October, with a total of 171 rockets and mortar shells fired against Israel. On October the 24th, 80 rockets and mortars were fired from the Gaza Strip into southern Israel over a 24-hour period. On November the 8th, a smuggling tunnel exploded in southern Gaza near Israeli soldiers along the Gaza border as a group of Israeli soldiers were in the middle of an operation to uncover it. On November the 10th, militants fired an anti-tank missile at an Israeli jeep on routine patrol near Israel's side of the border, wounding 4 soldiers, one of whom was in critical condition. On November the 11th, Hamas fired over 100 rockets into Israel over a 24-hour period. Hamas rockets fired into southern Israel caused the color red siren to sound in the cities of Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gan Yavni, and surrounding areas, causing Israelis within 7 kilometers of the Gaza Strip to remain near protected areas. Schools were canceled in the affected areas. According to the Israeli government, Operation Pillar Defense began in response to these 3 events. Israel's defense minister Ehud Barak said that the operation's objectives were the following. Number 1, strengthening Israel's deterrence against Hamas. Number 2, damaging Hamas's rocket arsenal. Number 3, damaging and hurting Hamas as an organization. And number 4, minimizing injury to Israeli civilians. The operation started on November the 14th with the killing of Ahmed Jabari, who is a top leader of the Gaza military wing of Hamas. During the operation, Israel launched more than 1,450 air, tank, and naval strikes against targets in the Gaza Strip during the operation, including rocket launching pads, weapons, depots, individual militants, and buildings of the Hamas regime. Hamas fired over 1,000 rockets against Israel. The Palestinian militant groups fired over 1,450 Iranian Fajr 5 Russian Grad rockets, Qassams, and mortars into the cities of Rishon LeZion, Beersheba, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and other population centers. Tel Aviv was hit for the first time since the 1991 Gulf War, and rockets were also aimed at Jerusalem. By November the 19th, over 252 Israelis had been physically injured in rocket attacks, and 30 more had been treated for acute stress reaction. Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system had intercepted about 409 rockets. Another 142 rockets had fallen on Gaza itself. A bomb attack against a Tel Aviv bus that wounded over 20 civilians received the applause from Hamas. The United States, Britain, Canada, and other Western countries expressed support for Israel's right to defend itself and condemned the Palestinian rocket attacks on Israel. The European Union's position came in a statement from foreign ministers which represented the 27-nation European Union countries, which stated the following. The European Union strongly condemns the rocket attacks on Israel from the Gaza Strip, which Hamas and other armed groups in Gaza must cease immediately. There can be no justification for the deliberate targeting of innocent civilians. Israel has the right to protect itself from these kinds of attacks. However, the European Union said that Israel only has the right to proportional self-defense. British Foreign Secretary William Hague said, Hamas bears principal responsibility for the current crisis. I utterly condemn rocket attacks from Gaza into southern Israel by Hamas and other armed groups. This creates an intolerable situation for Israeli civilians in southern Israel who have the right to live without fear of attacks from the Gaza Strip. U.S. President Barack Obama said, "The main elements that are causing the current crisis is an ever-escalating number of missiles that were landing not just in Israeli territory, but in areas that are populated. And there's no country on earth that would tolerate missiles raining down on its citizens from outside its borders. So the United States is fully supportive of Israel's right to defend itself from missiles landing on people's homes and workplaces and potentially killing civilians. And we will continue to support Israel's right to defend itself." Iran, Egypt, Turkey, and several other Arab and Muslim countries condemned the Israeli operation. The Israeli army said that out of 177 Palestinians that were killed, 120 of them were Palestinian militants. The Israeli Air Force said that it took all possible measures to avoid harming Palestinian civilians, utilizing precision strikes and issuing preemptive warnings to Palestinian residents. The Israeli army disseminated warning leaflets instructing civilians to avoid areas used by Hamas for firing rockets and also phoned residents to give them warnings. Targets were deliberately missed on the first strike to allow the non-combatants to vacate the area, and missions were aborted because of civilian presence. 4 Israeli civilians and 1 soldier have been killed in Palestinian rocket attacks, while over 250 Israelis have been injured. On November the 21st, Mohammed Kamel Amir, the Egyptian foreign minister, and U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton announced a ceasefire. According to the agreement, Israel and all Palestinian militant groups agreed to halt all hostilities. For the Palestinians, that means an end to Israeli airstrikes and assassinations of wanted militants. For Israel, it brings a halt to rocket fire and attempts at cross-border incursions from the Gaza. Egypt is the sponsor of the agreement and shall receive assurances of each party's commitment to the agreed deal. The Gaza ceasefire deal elevated the role and status of Egyptian President Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood to be a major player in the Middle East conflict between the Palestinians and Israel. The Arab Spring of 2011 has produced an alliance of Sunni Islamic states and movements, including Hamas, which Egypt now plays a central role. By elevating Egypt as a key player in the agreement, the Obama administration seems to be revealing their Middle East strategy that attempts to deal with the results of the Arab Spring. The current goal is to build a Sunni axis that will stand against the radical Shiite Islamic axis that is headed by Iran. U.S. Secretary of Defense Hillary Clinton praised Mohammed Morsi's efforts by saying, "This is a critical moment for the region. Egypt's new government is assuming the responsibility and leadership that has long made Egypt a cornerstone of regional stability and peace in the Middle East. Morsi is aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood, Egypt's most powerful political group and Hamas's own parent organization. In ideology, the Muslim Brotherhood supports the use of force against Israel to liberate what they see as Muslim lands. Only 2 months ago, the Brotherhood's supreme leader Mohammed Beatty proclaimed that regaining Jerusalem can only come through holy jihad. The group opposes Egypt's 1979 peace treaty with Israel. Egypt's task is to ensure that militant rockets fire into Israel stops and that Israel allows the opening of the long blockaded Gaza Strip and stops its own attacks against Hamas. However, during the fighting, Morsi and his aides sided openly with Hamas, accusing Israel of starting the assault and condemning its bombardment. During the days of Operation Pillar Defense, Hamas promised to continue carrying the rifle until the liberation of Palestine and the defeat of the Israeli occupation. Morsi has established his position as a regional player and partner of the United States administration. Because of his role, he improves his chances of receiving billions of dollars from the West, despite the fact that it has become Hamas's sponsor, does not recognize Israel, and refuses to speak with the Israeli government. Can Mohammed Morsi be trusted? On November the 22nd, Morsi issued a domestic presidential decree on Egyptian state television stating that any challenges to his decrees, laws, and decisions were banned. In response, a prominent Egyptian opposition leader called Morsi a new pharaoh of Egypt. As a result, the natural relations between Israel and the Sunni Islamic bloc are in conflict with each other. For now, the situation is only working because of Israeli military superiority, and Egypt is economically dependent on Western aid, which is mostly from the United States, and thus the United States has influence over Egypt regarding the matter. After the ceasefire was announced, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Operation Pillar of Defense had been successful and thanked U.S. President Barack Obama for his unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself. Netanyahu added that Israel and the United States will cooperate to stop the smuggling of weapons from Iran into the Gaza Strip. However, Netanyahu also warned that Israel is ready to act should Hamas start firing rockets at Israel again. He went on to say, "Now we are giving the ceasefire a chance. This is the right thing to do for the state of Israel at this time, but we are also prepared for the possibility that the ceasefire will not be upheld, and we will know how to act if the circumstances require it. The issue now becomes how to prevent Hamas from rearming. If they do rearm, they will be taking risk upon themselves. Once they have and acquire weapons, they will certainly use them." Netanyahu discussed this matter with U.S. President Barack Obama, and together they decided that Israel and the United States would work together to fight the smuggling of weapons to Hamas. Weapons that virtually all come from Iran. Netanyahu agreed to a ceasefire on November the 21st after U.S. President Barack Obama personally pledged to start deploying U.S. troops in the Egyptian Sinai next week. Obama's pledge addressed Israel's primary concern of the fight with Hamas, which is the total stoppage of the flow of Iranian arms and missiles to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Israel's Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Benny Gantz, said that Operation Pillar of Defense achieved all of its objectives, explaining that Israel attacked everything of Hamas that moves in the Gaza Strip, referring to Hamas's terror infrastructure, tunnels, weapons, caches, launching sites, and strategic facilities. Israel Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said that despite the Israeli government's decision to agree to a ceasefire, Israel would eventually need to overthrow the Hamas regime in the Gaza. He said that a ground operation in the Gaza Strip would require Israel reoccupying the Gaza Strip, and deciding to go forward with this endeavor only 2 months before the scheduled Israeli elections on January the 22nd was the wrong thing for Israel to do at this time, because he estimated that Israel ground troops going into the Gaza and occupying the Gaza with the purpose of overthrowing Hamas would take at least 4 months to accomplish. In the face of the U.S.-Israel-Egyptian understandings regarding the terms of the ceasefire, Hamas cannot credibly claim to have won guarantees to force Israel to end the Gaza blockade. Instead, Hamas rulers will be forced to watch as U.S. troops will now begin to enter the Egyptian Sinai just across from the Gaza border. The mission of the U.S. troops will be to break up the smuggling of weapons intended to be sent into the Gaza Strip. Hamas reacted to the Egyptian brokered ceasefire agreement by declaring victory over Israel. Ahmed Bar, a senior Hamas official, welcomed the ceasefire agreement. Hamas resistant groups have achieved a historic victory and have paved the way for the battle of liberating Palestine, he said. Hamas head Khaled Mashal said that Israel had failed to achieve its goals. He also said, "I would like to thank Egyptian President Mohammed Morsi. Egypt acted responsibly and understood the demands of the Hamas resistance in the Palestinian people. Until we do it again, Shalom, in Yeshua the Messiah, Amen."